Good day, fellow Thando Channel Book Club lovers. We are here and we are broadcasting from home via Zoom. And today I have the incredible and indomitable Pastor Doris Mufara with us as our guest for this week's show. And as is our custom, you know that I like to start every book club with a quote from a famous African author that I think encapsulates what I think the person's work is. And so this is from Dr. James Eman Agray. And the quote is, "The surest way to keep a people down is to educate the men and neglect the women. If you educate a man, you simply educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a family." And this quote, I think, encapsulates Doris's work, the ethos behind her book, and even the title of her book, which is Dare, a Diary to My Grandchildren. So welcome, Doris. It's a pleasure to have you on the book club. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Selina. And indeed, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the honor.
It's an honor for us to have you. You look glorious in your African print, something that I love about Doris. And it's just, you just look gorgeous, and it's just lovely to have you with us. So for those
Thank you so much, Selina. So do you.
Thank you. So, for those of you who are watching who have not been acquainted with Doris's work, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her before we begin today's interview. So, Doris's book, Dare, is a book intended to lovingly give the reader an invaluable guide to a philosophy for better living. It weaves personal experience with spirituality into a much needed inspirational message in the culture of self-entitlement. Doris Mufara believes that to be a fulfilled person, one must find their God-given purpose and the assignment carried therein, do it for God, for others, and for self. Doris herself is a wife, mother, and founding trustee of Grace Foundation and Place of Prayer. She is also an author and has released her first book titled Dare, Diary to My Grandchildren. She and her husband Stern have 4 children and 1 grandchild, and they live in Rua, Zimbabwe. She is a trained pastor and counselor and has worked for several years, actually more than a decade, in pastoral ministry, as well as working with the homeless, other vulnerable people, especially women and children. She's extremely passionate about marriage and relationship and has a God-given ability to bring healing to broken hearts. So there you have it. That's the goods on Doris as it is out there in the public domain. But let's have Doris tell us a little bit more in her own words about herself and why she chose to write this book.
Wow, why I chose to write this book, it's an idea that I always, for several years, I had nurtured. Because I totally believe that one of the things that we seriously need to do as Africans, if you look at our history, we are very oral people. What we have right now, most of it was passed on to us orally by our predecessors, by our ancestors. And sometimes it's hard to really know and to really understand where you're coming from, what kind of foundations were laid down for us, what kind of value systems did we follow. Of course, generally, we have an idea. Most Africans appreciate their culture, we have tradition and all of that. But when you look at yourself as an individual and where you're coming from, sometimes it's really hard. So looking at my own background, especially my parents getting divorced and never really having a chance to talk to key people like my grandparents. And even when eventually I started having that idea, most of them, were gone. I personally don't really have much of a history as to where I'm coming from on my paternal side, maybe a little bit on my maternal side, going back to my grandmother and just a little bit back to my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother taught me how to cook very good salsa, by the way. So that's very special to me. So I thought, no, I got to do better. Let me write a record for my own grandchildren. The kick did come, the inspiration was there, but you know how it is, you keep putting things off and you take notes in your head and sometimes on paper, but you're not just really doing it. And then my gorgeous, wonderful first granddaughter came along and she just pushed me into it. Her little face, just looking at her, cuddling her. I'm like, no, I got to do this now. What if something happens to me tomorrow and there's absolutely no record for her? So that's how I started writing. As for who I am, you've pretty much said it in a nutshell. But maybe people would like to know that I also love to talk. I'm a talker, and that's why I guess I preach.
Definitely, but you also use your talking for healing, because a lot of what you actually do in your everyday is counseling. You counsel people on the street, you counsel families, you counsel married couples, and I think that that is some very heroic work that we don't talk enough about. So yes, definitely the counseling is, I think, one of the upsides of the talking in addition to the preaching. So
and it's an area that I really find fulfilling myself, you know, when especially coming from a broken home myself, when I counsel people and I'm able to mend their relationships, or rather, God is able to mend relationships through me as a vessel. I just find that very fulfilling.
That's incredible, and that's amazing. And I think another aspect about Doris's talkativeness is actually your prayer ministry, which has been running for a couple of years. And what I find amazing about that is you got people from all denominations, all walks of life, who are gathering to pray. And it was also digitally driven, which I found quite future forward when we consider what happened in 2020 with the COVID pandemic. And so, you know, I think when we use our words to talk to our maker and to talk in faith and out of love and, you know, in agreement with other people, that's one of the best and most underutilized ways of using our words. So thank you, Doris, for all the many gifts you give us through your amazing words from your book, from your counseling, from your preaching, and to the prayer. And then I think a little known fact about Doris that I think could help you understand the amazingness behind this woman, and why the title Dare is so just fitting and suitable, is this excerpt from the very first page of her book. And if this doesn't make you want to read this book, then I don't know, because when I read it the first time, I was like, I gotta know what this woman has to say. And the first paragraph reads like this. It was the 20th of February, 2018. I was sitting in my office when suddenly your grandpa, unexpectedly but visibly excited, came in and handed me some keys. I looked at them curiously. They looked like car keys, but unusually smaller. Teasing me, he pulled me by the hand. It's you who says you want a motorbike. Come and get it. And that's the first paragraph to the book. So I think that I'm curious to know, since 2018, what's the journey with the motorcycle been like? You know, is it at home? Have you learned to ride it? And what has that been like for you?
Yes, it's been at home. In terms of learning, I've used a smaller bike to learn how to ride a motorbike, because this one is monstrous. And what happened was that COVID came along, and we shelved the idea. You know, of course, that was not the intention for me to learn to ride the big motorbike. So that's exactly something that we are looking into right now. Can I do it, or do we sell it and buy something that's a little bit lower for my height? Because this one is quite big. It's big, it's high. So we're looking at those options. But believe you me, I'm going to be zooming, you know, along the streets with my motorbike very, very, very soon. And finances permitting, who knows? I might get a collection of maybe 2 or 3.
Well, I love that. Doris and her fleet, Grandma Doris and her fleet of motorcycles. And why I love that is because, you know, if we look at our African culture and how women are supposed to sort of age in a certain way, you know, even the desire to have something like a motorcycle doesn't seem African. But I found that so powerful that that would be the very first thing you would lead with in terms of a legacy to leave the next generation and to leave our grandchildren. Because you spoke earlier about passing down values and traditions and beliefs. But also, I think what is so gracious and amazing about the book is that there's also a call to action for us to dare to do more, to be more, to evolve and to grow, and to progress in our own ways and do it on our own terms. Because the first lesson is dare to dream big. And dreaming is actually seeing things that you haven't done before or seen before. So I love that you gave such an amazing picture like that to the next generation. And what I I also love as a woman that's also starting to enter that period of middle age is that you just reminded me personally that, it's never too late to pursue a dream from the beginning or from scratch. So thank you for giving me personally that gift. And for those of you who also want to receive that gift, don't stop at watching this interview. Definitely get your hands on a copy of Dare. It is available on Kindle, Amazon, for those of us that are outside of Zimbabwe, but even for those of us who do have Kindle accounts in Zimbabwe, it's at a very reasonable price on Amazon. And Doris has an author page under Doris Mufara on Facebook, and you can contact her through there to also find out details about how you can get a copy delivered to you locally. So definitely, if you haven't read the book, this is something that you definitely want to do. What are some of the other lessons that are close to your heart that are also in this book?
Right. So just to make a quick comment on what you've learned around the motorcycle thing, that's exactly the thing. Getting past your fears, right? Getting past stereotypes. Because if you can't, if you deny yourself certain dreams, I used to think it was just crazy and I put it off. But then, like, over 50 will tell you it's too late to go back to school, for instance. It's too late to get married. It's too late for this, it's too late for that. So that's exactly the moral behind this whole thing. That's what God has taught me. It's not so much about being me, just being adventurous. Because if you were to know me, I'm not that adventurous, but God has taught me that life is an adventure and we need to be daring. We need to take the risk. Even if it means going back to law school at 70, do it, it's fine. The other lessons really at the end of the day, they all have to, I guess, to do with our purpose, right? For me, maybe if you don't mind, I don't know if I can just read quickly a portion that I have on the need for us to, not give up, not to drop the baton, not to drop the legacy. So this chapter 11, where I talk about, I make 3 points there. And in this instance, I talk about what you don't dare do. And the first point is don't dare negate your responsibilities. I'm not going to read that. It's a very interesting story. It's funny, actually. It's based on an experience I had with some corrupt police officers a few years ago. And they negated their responsibilities towards me and my family. And that really impacted on my life. But great lessons that I learned from there. And the second point coming off that is where I talk about not dropping your baton, and this is what I just want to say to somebody today out there. In view of COVID, people started their projects, people started building legacies, and COVID came came along and disrupted the work, disrupted that dream, disrupted. But it's important for us not to drop the baton. And the last thing basically is not to stay down. So I'll read quickly. It's based on Hebrews 12, verse 1-2. And it says, the scripture that talks about, let me just read it quickly. It says, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which do so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. The race is still going on, no matter what the distraction has been in your life. And the second verse says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. Again, let me say this, the race is still on, right? So here goes. I say life is a journey. The course was set for you as soon as you're conceived. As an individual, how you walk the journey is of paramount importance. You can either do so blindly or knowledgeably and wisely. It is all up to you. The writer of Hebrews paints the picture that we are to be aware of a cloud of witnesses, watching us as we run our race with patience. I believe that this refers to those gone before us, not in the sense of us ancestral spirits. I don't believe in ancestral worship, but as those who died in Christ Jesus, having left us a godly and holy standard based on the finished work of the cross. It refers to those who left us an inheritance and how it should empower and enrich us as intended, spiritually, emotionally, financially, and materially. We should be inspired by the godly examples set for us and aspire to pass them to the next generation. As they fulfill their God-given purposes and died in Christ, God likewise, with all of heaven, is watching over us and cheering us on. We are therefore encouraged to let go of every burden that sin, which includes COVID, diseases as a result of sin, brings in our lives, and do what we have been called to do, knowing that there are others with whom we are running, not in competition, but complementarily and in unison. And recently I was at an infants gala in which your youngest aunt was participating, at which I had been invited as guest of honor by the sports department. The time for the relay came and your aunt's house excelled. I watched as they passed the baton stick from one racer to the other. While some of the girls were fast, others were slow. I observed how the fast and efficient ones made up for lost time when they got the baton stick from the slow girls. The fact is they all ran and in their own individual unique way contributed to and maintained the momentum until the finish line. When they won, they did not win individually, but as a team that had cooperated to achieve the same goal. Every member of a family is meant to contribute towards the common vision in their own unique way. No matter how difficult the race may become, what is important is not to drop the baton. I encourage you not to drop the baton. Just a bit of baton.
Yeah, very, very
wise. Don't drop the baton. Don't stay down. Get up and keep going. Even if you fall, no matter what you're going through right now, that business is closed. That practice is struggling. You're down. Get up. That's what is important. Staying down is the problem.
Yeah.
Keep going. Yeah.
That's powerful. And I think a lot of people will be encouraged by that, especially the picture of the relay race. So definitely don't stay down. So to talk a little bit now about the process of putting together this book, I know that this was not the first book you intended to write. For many, many years, you had a dream to write a book, and you had actually intended to write a novel, and you ended up coming up with this nonfiction book, which was very much memoir-like. In it, you also talk about how you started things like the Grace Foundation and how your own personal journey of unpacking your purpose was. So how did this book overtake the dream book that you had been planning and dreaming about writing for years and years?
Yeah, I think, God gives us ideas, right? And we get excited and we start running with it. But I think what's important is to start. There's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that says, that speaks to the fact that we should start what God has put on our heart, and in His time, He'll make it beautiful. So I believe that the novel is done. It's actually been edited. It's over 300 pages. But as I wrote it, I realized that there was a certain maturity that was needed to it, because everything that I write has to impact people's hearts. It has to bring in healing. So there were also lessons that I needed to learn myself, things that needed to come together, that needed to make sense for this book to make sense. So it is done. Not only that, there is also another Christian book that has already been done. So I truly believe that there are actually several other books that have come along that I'm already working on. Sometimes, I think it's just so crazy. But I believe that Dare overtook, because at that time, like I said, my granddaughter came along. And I think panic sometimes, is a driver. I don't know what it does to us. When we're under pressure, it forces us to really dig deeper and then put things together. So overall, though, I believe that these books are coming out as God intends them to come out. So Vantage Point is on its way, soon to be published. There's also another one called Orphan's Language. There's Marriage Redeemed. Marriage Redeemed is really going to work a lot with books like A Vantage Point. People, when people read both books, one is fiction. It's a story, but it's illustrating the points that you're going to find in Marriage Redeemed. There's another one called The Mukondo. That one also was divine. This was divinely inspired. It's now I think on its 5th chapter, but God gave me a vision for this, but it's about a young couple. Again, reading this along with Marriage Redeemed, you then make everything, the whole picture come together. So I really have a lot on my plate right now, and God's grace is there though. I want to believe that by end of next year, this whole package will be up, will be out there for people to get their hands on and just read and be blessed.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to some of those titles, especially Vantage Point, which I'm deeply intrigued by, because you don't often get pastors writing fiction and writing novels. But having read the way that you told the stories in Dare, where you share personal anecdotes and memories, they're very creatively written, and it's a very easy read. So I'm looking forward to more of that style of writing in the other work. The book was launched in 2019, and it was received and endorsed widely by some leaders in all walks of life. So it wasn't necessarily a churchified sort of project. And quite a few of those people you met for the first time when you wrote the book. And Trevor Newby was one of those people who then turned out to be a champion of the book. He wrote a very good review about the book on book reviews online. He also has recently interviewed you on Conversations with Trevor. So how did that come about? And what can you share with other budding writers about things like endorsements and the impact, the reception that you've received around Dare?
You know, it's amazing, hey? One of the things I talk about in Dare, when I refer to my daughter, I use a story concerning my last born. She's now 10, turning 11. Is the ability to ask for help. You know, it's amazing how our little girl, I tell the story of how she spoke directly to her aunts and uncle in Geneva and asked them for a holiday there, and how they responded and asked us to do one or two things, get the visas, the etiquettes and whatever, and her aunts would come and pick them up. And they had 2 weeks of lovely time in Geneva, in Paris, you know, France, in Germany. It was just an amazing, it blew me away that this little child faithfully, and she was a giver, something had happened in the background where she had given something to God. And I'd say to her, you say what God will do for you. And then this whole story unfolded. But the most important lesson that I found, that I also learned, was that it's important to ask. So her story and my writing the story gave me the courage to approach certain people, some of whom I'd met once. And, you know, some of them, for instance, one Kataona Kanengoni, for example, works with my husband. He's a lawyer. So I'd met him on a few occasions, but then I thought, why not ask him? Fungisai Jakawapano has had a child going to the same school as mine. And we're doing school run. I'm picking my child up, up. I look at her and I feel the Holy Spirit saying, talk to her, and she gave me an endorsement, and there are other people like Bishop Vukani. But the same thing happened with Trevor Ngwe. I mean, I was at my younger sister's graduation at Celebration Center. I'd lost my car keys. I'm getting out to look for them for the second time after, she had received her degree. So I'm dashing out, and he had been the keynote speaker there. And we bump into each other in the foyer. And he greets me. I guess he was being gentlemanly. I greet him back. But I'd been impressed by his notes, by his speech, because they sounded like he had read my second book, the sequel to Dare. So I made a comment about that. I was like, Lord, thank you so much for that speech. It was amazing. And this is how it sounded like. And he got interested in my writing. And I said to him in the instant, actually, I do have a book that needs an endorsement. Do you mind? And he gave me his business card. I sent him an email, with the book. And within a few days, I think a day or two, he had responded. And within 2 weeks, he'd given me an endorsement. So my encouragement to people is don't look at people and judge them. They say don't judge a book by its cover. You may look at me, I look so collected, I look beautiful and all of that, but you don't know what's going on in my background. You might think that I'm hard to get, but as a matter of fact, I might be very, very easy to get along with. So it's the same thing, I think, with many other people. And I found Mr. Ngwe to be just so supportive, to be humble, very professional in his way of doing things. And all of these people, I believe, each and every one of them was a divine connection.
It was amazing.
So ask.
Yeah. So
ask.
And I think,
what have you got to lose? Exactly. Even if someone says no, I mean, you tried, you did it anyway, but you don't know what might come out of it.
Asking is free, and the worst that they can do is say no. But when they say yes, isn't that amazing? Because Trevor Niwe also promoted the book on his Twitter. He also bought 10 copies for his own nieces and nephews. He also spoke at your book launch and became such a champion. And I think sometimes that's what we want when we write a book. We want somebody to be impacted by it to the point where they are a willing advocate. I think that is sometimes the best validation. Somebody who doesn't know you, who has no reason to help you, then is impacted to that level. So I think that's an amazing impact story in terms of the book. Now, for those people who...
just for me to quickly mention this, Selina, one of the most amazing things that happened out of that was me going onto the internet one day and finding Dare on the #1 spot on a site called Book Authority. I mean, I was shaking and wondering what's going on, and I went into that space to just look at who Book Authority was. It's amazing. If you Google it right now to find out who they are and how they picked this book out of the many books, they use literally the internet, algorithms and all of that. And it's because of his endorsement. And it got 3 awards, really, besides the best happiness book to read in 2021. It was also the best, something called like dealing with fear book. It was the best. There was a third one. Now I'm forgetting what it is because I'm on Zoom. But anyway, there were 3 awards to it, and I found that amazing, So I'm really, truly grateful to God and how he has used these people in my life and how he used Mr. Ngwe to just put Dare on the out there, on the, maybe to say, international scene through, the internet. Yeah.
That's amazing. And all the glory to God, but also well done to you and your hard work and for just having the courage to step up and to ask. So that was really, really powerful. And where the book went and how it was celebrated is also really powerful. But it's only just the beginning. And so then what would your advice be to other people sitting in their homes like you this morning or any other day, kind of like, I want to write a book and I've been wanting to do this for the longest time, and they're beset with doubts, fears, insecurities, but also people, I think, Zimbabwean writers who think it can't be done. What would you say to them from what you've learned about the publishing process? And because you self-published this book, and I find that very incredible that from a self-published work, you were able to get, connected so well and to have this kind of impact.
You know what? First of all, I believe each and every one of us is special. So don't feel intimidated when you look at other authors who have made it. All right. Sometimes when you look at people who've already made it, it can be overwhelming. You can actually downplay what you have. You may actually think that maybe you're not good enough. Believe me, as long as you have a story to tell, you are good enough. Just write until you're satisfied that, you've put your thoughts down, you've put your idea down, you've put that story down. But it's also important to have support. Look for support. Have a good editor work with you. Have people like Selina, like yourself, work with you. You helped with the book launch. It was amazing. But not only that, you helped with my social media platforms. You really made them look good. So we can't be all things. There are people who are gifted in their own special way. Go to them, get a proofreader to look at your book. One of the things that really makes me sad is getting hold of a book with a very good title, interesting story, and I can't go past the second page because is just giving me a bad taste, if I may put it that way. You know how it is, you're reading, but it's just not right. And sometimes I feel bad. When you're feeling bad, you can't, it becomes torturous reading. And yet the story is there. So learn, go back to school. And when I'm talking about go back to school, I'm talking about joining clubs, writers' clubs. I'm a member of what is called Writers' Club, founded by my editor, great man, great writer, Philip Chidagayenzi. I'm getting a lot of help from there. Of course, I meet things that I've already learned, but I'm learning every day new things, not just from him, but from other writers. We have people like Mama Imelda Tsumba, who's the prolific writer. If she's there, what about you if you're a budding writer? There's no harm in you joining and learning the ropes. And these groups give out a lot of free information, which I discovered on some platforms overseas, you pay dearly for them. I was part of a certain guild, Writers Guild. It's American based. And it would cost you about $40 per month. And I was part of that for about 6 months. And I'm telling you, trust me, the local writers clubs will give you the same information for free. I'm not saying that we should take it for granted. And what makes me sad is that a lot of people, when things are coming free to them, I think they take them lightly, and yet it's a wealth of information. So write, learn, surround yourself with people, 2-3 people who help you to get the book out there. You can bring something out that is of good quality. Get a good printer. Don't just go to anybody. Go to someone who knows the ropes on how to put a book together. Yeah, and the thing is about self-publishing, for me, this was a blessing because I was in control of the whole process. And the internet was a great help. And like I said, all of you guys, a great help. But that's the good thing about self-publishing. You take control of your destiny as far as your authorship is concerned. In Zimbabwe, looks like we still have challenges to get ourselves traditionally published because traditional publishers would have to take on most of the responsibility anyway. So I don't know what's going on in that sector. Looks like it's very hard. I've tried to get traditionally published, and it hasn't been easy. So for me, the fallback was self-publishing. The downside with self-publishing, you've done the work and all of that, but I think it's very important that we monetize this venture. But as a writer, you want to focus more on the writing. So I feel like there's a niche there for people in marketing to come along and say, hey, Doris, I want to market your books for a commission. How can we work this out? And they do the legwork, going to bookshops, getting contracts, even, coming up with programs to do marketing on social media and so on and so forth. I think there's a good niche there. I was looking at it and thinking, can I do it myself? But because of my responsibilities, my need to sit down and write, but I've got a family to take on. I've got all these other programs, it's difficult. But that's the good thing about mentorship. Selina and we are here, we're talking about books. If you listen carefully as a budding writer, there's a whole lot of work that can be taken away from you. What I discovered in 3 years, you can discover in 30 years. So it's very good as well, like I say in the book, dare to listen, and learn.
Definitely dare to listen. And that's something that's in such a rare supply these days because everybody's talking, right? But who's actually listening and making sense of all the information that's being put out there. But I love what you said, what it takes 3 years for you to learn. Someone can learn in 30 minutes of listening in this conversation. And I appreciate that. And that's why I don't take the privilege of bringing writers like yourself to Thando channel audiences lightly at all. I think it is a great, great honor and responsibility. And so I'm glad to serve this community in that way because I'm eager to see more and more African women writing their truth and sharing that in the world and starting to have the conversation. It doesn't mean we all have to agree. It doesn't mean it all has to look the same. In fact, it shouldn't look the same. Otherwise, we won't grow and we won't stretch. So that is definitely very, very powerful advice to budding readers. And so now, as we wrap up today's interview, my last question is, why in particular should women be writing and publishing from Africa right now and in this season?
My goodness, African women have a lot to tell. They have a lot to tell. As if you look at Africa generally, it's faced with quite a lot of challenges, especially in this what is termed the global village, right? So you have a woman trying to find her space as trying to find a space professionally. You have women trying to find their space as mothers, as wives rather, and mothers, and all these roles, sometimes clash, but there are always stories in the background, stories that are happening in the background around these roles, around these responsibilities. And I truly believe that, because I'm a believer in a relationship. I love relationship. I have this thing where I always say, I don't believe in religion, I believe in relationship. And I believe that women as vessels of God, and when you look at God's definition of women being helpers and builders, have a lot of stories to tell, lessons that they are learning in their day-to-day living right now that can help future generations. Look at the challenges that our children are faced with right now. There are so many, especially with a lot coming to them through the media and with the internet and all that it has brought, the good things, but there's also a lot of bad that is going on. Look at the challenges that we have as Africans, unemployment and all of that, and all that our youth are going through. But also one aspect that I found interesting is when I'm looking at young mothers and how they've been brought up, the millennials, how they've been brought up, people like us, our age, have a lot to teach them. Can you imagine that recently I felt like we need to put together simple things like recipe books, going back to teaching people how to cook a simple thing like salsa. I'm amazed. A while back, I asked, my house was full with my nephews, with my cousins, my nieces, and I got each and every one of them just to cook salsa, and they cannot even hold the msika properly. They cannot even hold the what do you call it, the mugoti properly. And for me, not that it's scary, but I realized, oh no, there's something going on, and there are African women there, different areas, that they can actually look at, take up and write recipe books, mentorship, books. Our kids need mentoring. Young women need mentoring. Young men need mentoring. Our young men need to hear from us. There's been a lot of focus on the girl child. And I feel like the boy child has been left behind. We need to write, to put down advice. What is it as women? What are our expectations from our young men? We're talking with my daughter recently, and we're looking at, if I was to take 10 boys and put them there and ask them a simple question, what is a woman to you? What would be their responses? We need to mentor our young men so that they can begin to respect women. We need to mentor our young women so that they begin to understand their role. That is, it's not in competition with men, but it is in complement. It should complement that. So I don't know. I just feel that as women, there's a lot. I could go on and on. But as women, we need to seriously look at our experiences and see what we can put down in paper. I believe Mary, the mother of Jesus, wrote a book, even if it was not included in the Bible, because I think if we would read her story, we probably wouldn't appreciate the story of salvation as much, depending on from what angle she wrote it. So this is why I'm saying I believe as women, from our experiences, day-to-day experiences, we've got life lessons that we can put on paper.
Definitely well said, and well shared. And so here we are, and we've come to the end of our time on today's program. And I'm so happy that we did this, because what came out today is rich. And I'm so glad that we get to share that with all of our Thando channel, our book club lovers, and all our viewers online. So take what you may, if you dare to. And if you're looking for a copy of Dare, remember the title is Dare, A Diary to My Grandchildren by Doris Mufara. You can find that on Kindle, Amazon, or you can get in touch with her on her author page, or her Instagram page or her Twitter. Doris is very easy to find. Just look for Doris Mufara. It's not a difficult handle, and she'll be able to connect you with how you can get a copy locally. And so here we are at the end of another edition of the book club, airing on Thursday, not Wednesday. Just a slight deviation there, but it was worth the wait. We will see you all next week, Wednesday, same time, same place, 7 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube, with yet another vivacious, incredible African female author with their story to share with you. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Doris, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
Thank you.